obviously on this channel you'd probably be aware that I'm a huge fan of the Line 6 HX Stomp. I've had one since the end of 2018. At the time I was a Kemper user and it took me a while to start to get to grips with the HX Stomp, a few months, and it wasn't my main piece of gear for a while. The Kemper definitely was the thing that I continued to use for quite a long time, but gradually over time I started to use it more and more, and then I got the full Helix, and for a while now this has been my main piece of gear that I use. You know, if I'm checking out new amp models, if I'm checking out new reverbs and all that sort of stuff, the HX Stomp is the thing I go to first. It's small, it's compact, it's half the power of a Helix roughly, but I think this is the best thing that Line 6 ever designed and made. And I think it's going to be the best piece of gear for me for a few years to come still. And I think even right now, 2022, it's just got a little bit better, and with each update these things to me seem to get even more fun. And it's not as if it's coming from a place where it was, you know, okay and now it's better. It's more like, okay, that was great and now it's even more great. So I think this would be the #1 piece of gear that I would recommend to basically any guitarist. It's an interface, it can do dual amping, it's got loads of great reverbs and delays now, it's got decent drives, it's got some really cool amp models. I think most people in any genre will find a handful of amp models at least that they really get on with. You know, it's got snapshot switching, so you can do really clever stuff in a preset. You know, take an amp from clean to distorted. You can have delays doing different things. We've got 8 blocks, that's a limitation, but with snapshots you can do an incredible amount of things with them. You've got looping in there. You've got now some kind of sounds from people like Chase Bliss. You know, you can think of some weirder type effects. You can now do this sort of thing in the HX Stomp, and I think in a more controllable way than you could with like a Chase Bliss Mood. And just as an example of something that you wouldn't be able to do with a Chase Bliss Mood, because you've got the ability to put in several of these blocks. You could have 1 block freezing, so that's a ratchet, and then I can introduce a tessellator. You know, so something like that, it would not be at all possible, I think, on any other device. It's not something that maybe everyone wants to do, but for someone like me who wants some ambient tones at my feet, you know, it's some incredible creative stuff in there. And, you know, that new tessellator is just one example of things that I didn't know that I would use, things that I didn't know I necessarily wanted, but things that are making my life as a guitarist a little bit better. And I thought about the cost of some of these things in relation to other things. So you could think about, right, maybe a Strymon Big Sky might cost about the same as the HX Stomp. Now, I think the Strymon Big Sky, the Strymon Timeline, they are still amazing pedals, but those have not changed at all since they came out about a decade ago. Now the HX Stomp costs about the same, but in about half the time has changed immeasurably from what initially it was. You know, there's way more effects in there, there's way more amps, and there's different functionality even now. So I know some people kind of think about modelling as a thing which kind of decreases in value. You know, you get your use out of this thing and then they bring out a new one and suddenly this bit of gear is not worth anything. Say back in the day it would have been a Pod HD 300 or something, and then once they brought out the next piece of gear, this became kind of digital waste. The thing is that now Line 6 are creating more and more value every year, so that even if they did bring out an HX Stomp again, I don't know, a new version in a couple of years' time, the people that have bought it would have had the benefit of some improvement year on year, or maybe even twice a year, some years, to the point where I think, you know, most other modelers are not quite like this. Fractal are and do some incredible stuff, and Kemper, I think it should be noted that 10 years on, are still doing updates. They're still improving the thing on the same piece of hardware, roughly. So people haven't had to buy a new generation. I think that's worth noting. I think that's also providing good value for people. So for, you know, most pieces of gear, you buy the piece of gear and maybe get some amount of use out of it, and then before people started to do this thing like Line 6 are doing, where they're using resources to improve the product kind of year on year, it would be fair to say that these things sort of could become digital waste. People talk about like the value of a valve amp potentially could go up in time, and that's possibly not the case with something like this, but also a valve amp doesn't particularly evolve over time either, does it? So, you know, I could have bought a Leather Boogie Electrodyne 10 years ago, but it's still the same thing that it was back then. It still has the same limitations, and it doesn't make fresh new sounds unless I augment it with something, whereas Line 6 are augmenting the capabilities of the HX Stomp and the sound palette, things you can get out of it. You know, now that I can do this kind of thing, you know, and make new combinations of tones every day, which is basically what you've seen me doing now for years. You know, you could put a PV5150 on the left hand side of your ears, you could put a Soldano slow on the right hand side, you know, all these kind of things, new amps that come along, new effects. And not only that, but now I think you've got examples of some really I think, great sounding reverbs, even better than before. So these came from the team from DSP Victoria, I think worked for Digitech. These are some really talented folks, and you know, even the reverb capability in the HX Stomp now is something that I would want in another kind of pedal. You know, if these things were available in some other pedal format, the delays that are in there, the creative kind of stuff that's in there now, the amp modeling, all of that stuff in and of its own right, and almost every area in there is, I think, of great value, and it's still getting better. I think of things like you can pay for subscriptions to things like STL or whatever, or subscriptions to Netflix, these bits and pieces, for something in 2022 to still be getting better every kind of few months or every year without you having to pay more money for that additional kind of great stuff. I think it's unusual, seems unusual to me. It seems kind of like a slightly too good to be true kind of thing, but for me that really is true. The HX Stomp is getting better all the time, and for anyone who would listen, I'd say that's the best piece of gear that I can think of. You know, there are other modelers out there. There's the Boss GT1000 Core, you know, which is more powerful than this. You know, there's the Headrush MX5 if you're into that sort of thing, but they don't tend to update things quite the same as Line 6 do. And some of this creative stuff, some of these new reverbs, some of these new amp models, I think for me the HX Stomp is the top of the tree. You know, the Fractal FM3 is great as well and can do some really, really great grown-up sounds. Of course, it's about double the price of an HX Stomp, but for me, those two would be the kind of main two model things that I would see battling it out that aren't crazy expensive. Obviously £400 is a lot less expensive than 1,000. I think is the FM3 price now. It gets better all the time. And again, the FM3 just had a firmware update. They're improving things all the time as well. So, great piece of gear. Let me know if you've got your favourite pieces of gear that seem to be getting better. Is this something that other companies are doing as well outside of modelling? I feel like Walrus Audio do a little bit of this sort of thing. I think it's something really nice to see when you've supported a company and bought a piece of their gear that there's like some giving back in some way where they're making things better for you. It's a thing that I wish Strymon would do actually, because you could imagine that the Big Sky or the Timeline could have been even better. As great as they are, there's other stuff surely that those pedals could have done, or other kind of things that they could do with those pedals which I think would make them even better today. Maybe. Thank you for stopping by. If you want to like and subscribe, you could. I'll catch you in another video. Oh, the preset that I was using in the opening was an older one that I found. It's the ODS Clean Dude, I think. It's in the folder. I'll drop it into the folder again. But yeah, I really like that tone. Okay, so this is one small piece of information that I wanted to give you about what's new in the Line 6 Helix firmware 3.15. Now, at the moment, this preset, we've got it set up like this. So, snapshot 3, snapshot 1, and I think you can get snapshot 2 like that. You see it's in snapshot 2 mode there. So this to me is a little bit clumsy. So what I wanted to show you was that we've actually got some new capabilities. So I'm going to set this all back to none. So when we come back to our screen, we're in not snapshot mode, not preset mode, we're in stomp mode. And if you press these two buttons together, you can get to command center. So now, in snapshot 1, which is not what I'm in at the moment, so I want to set myself to snapshot 1 first. Let me just show you what we can do. So, command center, command snapshot 1, and in snapshot 1, I obviously don't want to choose snapshot 1 because I'm already in snapshot 1, but I wanted to choose snapshot 2. So that's that. Now if I go to snapshot 2, you'll see go to snapshot 3 like that. So now when I'm in snapshot 3, command center, I go to snapshot 1. So you see essentially this one button is changing its behavior for every single snapshot, and I think that's really cool to be able to do that actually. So now you can get all your snapshots on this one button, and say like if you're in snapshot 1, which is my rhythm tone here, I only ever go to clean. Okay, well now I can set those to do different things. So that's new, and I think something you should be aware of. So you can essentially change snapshots and the command center assignments for which snapshots they go on each button. So essentially you can set that to do all sorts of fun stuff. Now what else could we do over here? Yeah, so basically we could have it so that on any snapshot we could have all of the other snapshots available. So in 3 we got 1, so 3, so I want 2 available there. And now if I change to snapshot 1, I want 2 and 3 available. So foot switch 2, I'm going to change to 3. And then snapshot 3, I got 1 and 2. Snapshot 1, snapshot 2, I want 1 and 3 available. So I'm going to actually change the order there. So foot switch 1 will be snapshot 1, foot switch 2, snapshot 3. And so now I've got access to all of my snapshots really easily, as well as having a tuner there, and I don't have to do the tap dancing thing. I don't have to do any long holds that are going to potentially throw off my timing. So I'm really pleased with that. I can move into snapshot mode with the Helix or HX Stomp, but have all of my snapshots available with just 2 buttons, and I think that's quite a powerful little thing. So that's one change that's been made that maybe you won't see too many other people talk about, but this was something that I was actually asking for, so I'm really happy that that's possible now. So Command Center can now send snapshot changes that are different per snapshot. Just jump into here and yeah, awesome. Save. Catch you in a little bit.